science knowledge only adds to the excitement, the mystery, and the awe of a flower.
Evidence is evidence. It's public, everybody can look at the evidence and assess it, and eventually, if there's enough evidence, come to the same conclusion.
Cockatoos with attitude. Cockatoo.
Hi, and welcome to Cockatoo. Cockatoos with attitude.
It typically presents early as birds who have dirty vents. They have droppings on their tail feathers. That's probably where most people see it, and then the people who just aren't quite as observant see birds who are straining to pass droppings, and oftentimes grunting or groaning or squeaking when they go. And the reason for that is that these birds are putting on an abdominal press to try and get the urine and feces that's in their cloaca to come out. Sometimes people will notice the smell to their urine or their feces because this material, the feces and urine, isn't being passed on a regular basis. It gives time for bacteria to grow in there, so you get those sour, sweet, fermenting, infected dropping smell. But what people don't notice right off usually is the fact that the bird's lost the ability to normally use its vent. Their vents don't pucker up and contract the way that they're supposed to, and so that's partially why they dribble urine or feces out of their vent. And the contractions, the peristaltic contractions that empty their vent, no longer work quite right. So in order to empty the urine and feces out of there, they have to press with their abdominal wall. Now, if they do that long enough, what happens is the contraction tends to not only push the material that's in their cloaca out, but it tends to try and push their whole cloaca out. But I think that birds who have good diets and are active and stuff like that, even if they have it, they do better. They go back and stand on that perch forever. I think that they're, they don't do as well with their treatment. So, plus, I think that this is just an observation. I can't prove it, but I think parrots are not big water drinkers. They get most of their water from their food, but I think they do better with moist, wet foods than they do with a bowl of water. So feeding it, one of my concerns about pellet-only diets is that it's dry. And I think those birds oftentimes don't drink as much water as I would like to see them drink. I think that they're great diets, and there's some really great pellets out there, Rowdy Bush, Harrison's, a lot of those diets. But I think I'm at least reluctant to feed my own birds nothing but pellets, because I just don't think that it's not all about nutrition, it's also about format. I think nutritionalists, not physiologists, but nutritionalists kind of felt like in the 60s that they'd had our diet figured out so that you could get everything you needed in this one little wafer or one big tablet. You get all the amino acids and fats and whatever you needed, and we could just put it in this, that's all you'd have to do. But the reality is that you can't do that. You have to have fiber in your diet, and you have to have, certain other format issues with your diet for you to really be healthy. Your colon was made to be driven by the presence of long fiber, because we're a fermentive herbivore physiologically, and without the fiber, your colon just doesn't work right. And there's other aspects besides that. But I think that's also true for birds. And I think so to get nothing but, as much as I love it, Harrison's or Rowdy Bush or one of those other diets, misses the format aspect of that. So that's why my birds eat a combination of foods, which includes a pellet, so they get that broad nutritional base from the pellet. But I think having, high fiber vegetables and some fruits and some other things in there that add to that from the format standpoint, is probably important. In the summertime, I tend to pull the corn out of my birds' mash because I'm trying to decrease their calories as well. But because my birds go outside pretty much 360 days out of the year or whatever. I mean, if it's raining horizontally, my birds stay in. But every other day, if it's raining and chilly, they still go out. But they do that every day, so they're all hardened off and accustomed to it. But I do give them more calories, so I will add some seed to their diet during really cold days. All winter long, they get some more high-calorie, carbohydrate-y things because I'm just trying to get more concentrated calories in them, and they do eat more when it's cold. So I'm just trying to kind of compensate for their environment. But in the summertime, when it's hot and nice, and I try to pull as much of that stuff out as possible because I don't want them fat. So try to I want them to have as much food as they want to eat, but not overdose their calories, because I think birds are like us. They will eat well beyond their caloric needs if they like the food. So you need to be aware of your birds' health, and you need to think about both how you keep and treat them and the environment that they're exposed to. So I would tell you that when you add new birds to your home, whether it's your first bird or your 20th bird, you want to make sure that bird comes from, or at least be aware of the environment that it comes from. It needs to go see a veterinarian and be tested for at least the most common of those diseases. I just think that that's wise, and that's part of the responsibility of owning that bird. It's not that I'm trying to build my practice. It's just irresponsible, I think, to bring unchecked, untested birds into your environment. And then you just need to have some level of regular monitoring, just like you'd go to the doctor periodically. At least have a doctor touch that bird, a veterinarian who knows what he's talking about, and preferably a board-certified avian veterinarian, but at least the most qualified person you can find. Touch that bird on a regular basis every year. We like to do some blood work on birds every 5 years in my practice. I think every year is probably more than most birds need, but we really like to at least get our hands on them so we can look at them, see what their skin looks like, see what their droppings look like, palpate them for lumps and bumps, look in their vent, look down their throat, make sure they don't have things that if we caught it early we could fix. New birds should be quarantined for a period of time. I say 30 days. Things happen pretty quick in birds. I don't think you have to quarantine them forever, but a period of quarantine before they go have direct contact with your other birds is wise. You want to take care of the established birds, the birds you've had for a long time first. Take care of the new birds last, so you don't take things from your new birds to your old birds. Feather destructive behavior or feather picking or self-mutilation problems is probably one of the most common syndromes or common problems that board-certified avian veterinarians see. In my practice, we'll probably see at least one or more new cases of those problems every day that we see patients. I think there's a lot of stuff written and a lot of stuff in the literature about proving what these birds do not have. And I can tell you that in my practice we don't get quite as caught up on those things, but we kind of know that, I guess there's things that could mimic feather destructive behavior. Infectious diseases like beak and feather disease or polyoma that causes damage to feathers. The vast majority of these birds don't have anything that's like that. I envision them having one little feather there, and they're trying to get at that feather to pluck it to get that little dose of epinephrine, and they accidentally pinch their skin. But when they pinch the skin, that has a crazy reaction compared to just pulling the feather. I mean, it hurts a lot more, and it gets a lot more of a result, and so they get a big dose of epinephrine. So that then they suddenly become converts. Instead of just picking feathers, at least, they find that there's this huge advantage of pinching their skin. These birds' brains will not forget about the fact that they have an answer to their anxiety, and the answer is pulling feathers or biting themselves and making a hole in themselves. So I think untreated, the prognosis for these birds is bad because they will continue feather picking. I think their anxiety situation gets worse and worse because anxiety begets anxiety, and sooner or later most of these birds are destroyed. That majority of birds who we see who are perhaps the most common feather picking, I think the prognosis is really good. I would say with haloparidol alone, we have close to a 90% success rate. I think it's even better if they get some environmental and behavioral counseling as well, and people work on making those things better and better. If a bird's owner can just dedicate themselves to giving their haldol to their bird and observing them, the majority of them do very well. Now, prevention. How do we prevent it? Well, that's a big problem, because the paradigm of the bird industry right now is to sell hand-raised birds. So I honestly think the solution is to change that paradigm. But to get the bird industry to buy into letting parents raise birds again has two big problems. One is it's what the buyer expects. The other side of it is financial, because if you let the parents raise their birds, they rarely will double clutch again. That's the end of their breeding for a year. So, but if you take those chicks away, those birds will go right back and lay another clutch. So you're getting 8 or 12 or 16 chicks out of a pair a year versus 4. But if you're cutting your profits down by 75%, you're getting paid for 4 chicks a year instead of 12 chicks a year, or maybe even 16 chicks a year. Makes it pretty hard to stay in business as a bird breeder. Leave a chick with a parent and have the parent raise chicks. I think your chances of getting a self-destructive bird is much, much less. Birds who fly are much less likely to do self-destructive behaviors. Birds who have highly developed relationships with their owners are oftentimes less likely to do that. So the other advice I have with every new bird owner is to find a good bird behavioralist, bird trainer, and teach your bird good manners first. I think good manners for a bird consist of step up, step down, come to his name, stay when you tell him to stay, and poop on command. Those are just things that make your bird a lot more easy to live with, and if they do it, they can spend more time out of the cage. But once they've learned the come and stay commands, then you can start working on letting your bird free fly in your house or with your environment, because although I'm the first to say that there's nothing healthier and nothing more dangerous for a bird than to fly. The potential for calamity is great, but birds who get to fly are much more mentally and physically healthy than birds who can't fly. I mean, it's the foundation of being a bird. A bird's made to fly, but you really should have that control first. You need a bird who will stay when you tell him to stay, and will come when you tell him to come. So if he gets outside the door and he's sitting up on top of that pine tree in your backyard, it sure is nice if you just whistle or call for him and he comes down to you. If he doesn't, you may never see him again. And if you have him out with you and you can put him down and tell him to stay and have some good hope that he's going to stay where you put him, then he's much less likely to fly as well. So, and I would also contend that teaching a bird to do those behaviors is no tougher than teaching your new dog to do good manners behavior. I mean, most people's dogs will stay when they tell them to stay, and they come when they call them. The dog's a little more compelled to come to you, because that's part of being a dog. The bird's really has to think there's a reward at the end of that behavior, but I think you can teach most birds to do that. So I think that's part of the prevention. I think creating environments where the birds have to search for food and do foraging behavior, that have toys and other things that they're interactive with, have things like big cages outside where they can get fresh air, sunshine, make a big mess and not get into trouble, not destroy the kitchen cabinets or the furniture. All those things are good, but not everybody can put their bird outside in the backyard for noise reasons, because they live in an apartment complex or someplace where they can have their bird in the backyard. But those are things that should be goals if you can do it as a bird owner. To own a parrot, to own any animal who's that intelligent, whether it be a parrot or a primate, takes a much larger commitment than having something that doesn't need social interaction that doesn't need to be mentally stimulated. And you can have goldfish and never come home except to feed them and clean their cage once a week, and your goldfish might be perfectly happy. You can't do that with a macaw. You can't do that with a Moluccan cockatoo. They need that social interaction. They need that mental stimulation to be happy, healthy animals. So, but include them in your lives and supply them that environment, and it can be very rewarding both for the bird and for the owner. I think it's also important for bird owners to realize that birds don't have to have a single owner in their own life. It'd be nice if they did, and if you're the perfect bird owner, I think that's really marvelous, because I think the birds, I think they have long memories, and they remember the people who have been in their lives oftentimes their whole life. I've met birds whose owners have had to go away and come back 10, 15 years later. The bird knows exactly who they are the moment they see them. But birds do accept new people in their lives. Not only that, but I'm pretty positive that if you're a parrot in the wild, your chances of spending your whole life with a single mate is probably pretty slim. Just because the way the world is, it's dangerous out there, and the wind blows and storms come and predators are out there, and your chances of being paired with a single mate their whole lives is challenging. So I think lots of bird species pair bond for life, but it's the life of their mate, not their lives. Or until they're separated. And some parrot species, that is not true at all. If you look at like eclectus, who have very strange social behaviors, the females are polygamous. They have multiple male mates. The males are monogamous. They're committed to their female mate as long as they can stick with her. So it's not all the same. It's not, one answer fits all parrots.
Wonderful.